My name is Piper Kerman. I am the author of the memoir, Orange is the New Black, My Year in a Women's Prison. And of course, when I set foot in a place like this, when I come to a women's prison, I am immediately transported back in time 10 years to the remarkable community of women that I found myself a part of when I was doing time. Now, I was so fortunate that I only spent 1 year in a federal institution for women. And the women that I met there had a powerful, powerful impact on me. They changed my life. They helped me survive that year, and they shared their own survival with me. And they also made an indelible impression on me about the dramatic, pressing reforms that we need in this criminal justice system in America. And yeah. Many of those women are in my life today, and I am so, so grateful for their friendship. Now, when I'm in this place, I also am thinking about the other women's institution that I spent part of my life in, and that is a women's college. I went to a women's college, Smith College. I graduated about more than 20 years ago. And it was also a remarkable community of women who made an indelible impression on me, changed my life. And I was very fortunate to spend 4 years inside of that institution. And not just because I got a great education, but also because I left that place very clear on the fact that women's lives matter. Women's thoughts and opinions are really important. And women's relationships with each other are fascinating and transformative and change the world. And I gotta tell you, I don't know if all girls and young women are getting those messages from society, but I left college really clear on those facts. Now, sometimes people say, what are the similarities between a women's prison and a women's college? And I'll tell you that the most important similarities have to do with those relationships, with the ways that women compete and the ways that women collaborate. But truthfully, the differences between those kinds of institutions are much more dramatic. Now, a women's college exists to help women become the very best that they can be, and to prepare them to go out in the world and do whatever they set their minds to, and to help them, expand their understanding of the world and the changes that they're going to go out there and create in that world. A women's prison exists to punish, and in America, most states spend more money on punishment than they spend on higher education. Now, the problem with American prisons is that they are, in fact, very, very harsh places. Places where you are defined every single day that you're doing time by your worst choice and your biggest mistake and your biggest failure. And time spent in an institution, in a prison institution, is time cut off from the outside world. And my experience doing time is that most of your mental energies are devoted towards surviving in that institution. Far too few American prisons are doing substantive work to help people make very necessary and needed changes, to help them think about what they're going to do differently when they go home, and just about everybody is coming home. And not enough work to help people recognize what is needed for them to be their best selves and what is really possible for them out there in the world, out in the outside world where they're going back. Now, I would argue passionately that if we want prisoners to be transformed for the better, then an essential missing piece of the puzzle is higher education. Here is what we know. College education for prisoners works. People who get the opportunity to earn a bachelor's degree while they are locked up have a recidivism rate of less than 6%. We know that education is the truly transformative thing that helps people leave prison successfully. But back in the 90s, Pell Grants, federal Pell Grants for prisoners and state tuition assistance for prisoners was taken away. And almost overnight, it became almost impossible to get a college education if you were locked up in prison. Because you gotta know, 80% of people who are accused of a crime in this country are too poor to even afford to hire a lawyer to represent them in court, let alone afford college tuition, right? So that's a really significant problem. That's a barrier. Now, most of the women that I did time with, well, let me tell you a little bit about how I would describe the women that I did time with. I would describe them as perceptive. I would describe them as thoughtful, decisive, curious, and creative. And my point is this. Not only did women need to learn, many of those women were really ready to learn. Now, when I was in college, a lot of people had made a lot of sacrifices. Students and families had made sacrifices to be there. Some people had traveled very, very far, sometimes around the world to get their education, and many families and students were making big financial sacrifices, things that they thought were really worth it. Now, when you come into a women's prison, of course, you are going to meet people who have committed crimes. But when you look at women and girls in the system, what you're going to see too often is people who have been sacrificed. We know what drives women's involvement in crime. It is mental health problems. It is addiction. And overwhelmingly for women and girls in the system, it is the experience of abuse somewhere in their personal history. And I gotta tell you, when a girl doesn't have the safety that she deserves, far too often her education ends prematurely. And we know that when a kid drops out of high school, their chances of going to prison go way up. So these women that I did time with, most of them, they never had the shot at being a part of an institution as productive as that women's college that I got the chance to attend, right? And I think that for most people, if they had met the women that I did time with, they would probably say that locking them away in a prison institution was somewhere in between pointless and absurd, because most of the women that I was doing time with had committed low-level crimes and nonviolent crimes. And I wish that I could tell you that the Federal Bureau of Prisons was doing much to foster that, perception and curiosity and decisiveness and all those other good qualities that I described, and was doing something to recognize those qualities and to foster them and to direct them towards something that would create better futures for those women after prison. But I can't tell you that in all honesty. Now, the women that I did time with, they deserved the same shot that I deserved. They deserved that shot to go to college. They deserved to be part of an incredibly productive institution. And if we want that to happen, then we have to focus on making prisons not just places that punish, but also places that educate. So some of the women that I did time with, against all odds, they went home and they flourished. They got their college education against very tough odds, and they made amazing lives for themselves after incarceration. But wouldn't it have made more sense for them to do that while they were locked up in prison? So we can stop wasting time, and we can stop wasting money, and we can stop wasting human potential if we make sure that a college education is possible for people in prison who need it and who are ready to do the work. Now, in this country, there are some excellent college education programs, but there's only a handful of them. They are amazing places like the College and Community Fellowship for Women, or Hudson Link, or the Bard Prison Initiative. Now, what we know is that we need more of those programs. And to see that happen, we need to reinstate Pell Grants, and we need to make sure that tuition assistance for prisoners is brought back, that was taken away. And we also need the thousands of colleges and universities, which are all over this country, to forge direct relationships with the thousands of prisons that we have built all over this country. And we need those colleges and universities to end admissions discrimination against the 60 million Americans who have a conviction as part of our past. Now, I learned when I was in prison that the government can strip you of everything, literally. They can take away your earrings, your underpants, your dignity, but they can never take away your education. They can never take away your ability to think critically. They can never take away your ability to understand the world and to perceive your life in a broader context. And that's what a college education gives you. People ask me sometimes, Piper, what would your life be like if you had never been locked up in prison? Can you imagine that? And I got to tell you something, it is really easy for me to imagine that. But it is impossible for me to imagine what my life would be like without my college education. That is how much it transforms who you are as a person. It changes the way you think about yourself, it changes the way that you think about the world, and it changes the way that you solve problems. And, every woman I did time deserves that kind of change and that kind of transformation. Now, if we want people in prison to change, they must get the tools to change. They must get the tools for transformation. And that means education, pure and simple. Thank you.